14p in the back.
Good morning.
It's almost like it's one
More time.
really.
Good morning.
It's
There we go. I knew you were here. Well, welcome to
Smart man.
part
Awesome.
3 of the inaugural
Yes, please.
Business Travel Show Innovation Face-Off in person.
Hey, madam.
And this morning, as you see, we'll
Different whole bowl,
hear
isn't it?
from 3 entrants, Table4One, HRS, and TripShift. And I'm David Meyer. I'm from the BTN Group, and I'm happy that you're with us this morning as 3 more entrants come before you and the judges to show you their innovations in business travel and business travel management as they compete to win the coveted Business Travel Innovator Award. There you go. Please join me in welcoming back our distinguished panel of judges, including head judge Steve Clagg, Travel Technology Manager for Microsoft, ServiceNow Regional Travel Manager EMEA, Karine Morin, EY Innovation and Technology Leader Ian Spearing, and the 2021 Business Travel Show Europe Business Travel Innovator Award winner, Grapevine CEO Jack Dow. So we're thrilled to have these great judges. They've been asking wonderful questions of the other contestants, and I'm sure we'll hear some more today. In this session, we're going to hear from 3 more of the 9 innovative business travel supplier presenters chosen from 20 applicants by our selection committee to vie today as contestants. In this segment, we'll see a tool designed to enhance the traveler dining experience and 2 innovations focused on sustainability, with presentations, as I said, from Table4One, HRS, and TripShift. Presenters are limited to 7 minutes for their presentations. They then will have 4 minutes of Q&A with our judges, followed by 2 minutes of Q&A with you. And I'll be very strict about the 7 minutes and the 4 minutes, but we really want to encourage your questions, so we will not be strict about the 2 minutes for audience participation. All right, and now we're ready to begin with part 3 of the Innovation Face-Off. And first up this round is Table4One CEO and co-founder, Kieran Hoffey. So, Kieran, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kieran Hoffey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Table4One. Just before I start, could I get a sense with a show of hands? How many of us here travel on business? Okay, great. And how many travel alone sometimes on business? Great. So have you ever had the situation where you've been sitting alone in a restaurant, scrolling on your phone, or ordering room service because you don't want to go down to the bar and sit on your own? Has that ever happened to you? And if it has, how did it make you feel? If it made you feel alone, the strange thing is you're not actually alone, because half of business trips are taken alone, and about a third of business meals are eaten alone. Even during COVID in 2021, a staggering $50 billion was spent on solo business meals around the world. My own personal situation, I was in Manchester a few years ago. I had just closed one of the biggest deals of my career, and I wanted to celebrate, but I was on my own. So I decided to treat myself to a nice meal in a lovely restaurant. And as I was going into the restaurant, I actually counted 10 other people in the same restaurant sitting on their own as well. Now, as luck would have it, I was sitting at a table beside a really interesting guy. Huge coincidence, he had just finished reading a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Fantastic book, I'd highly recommend it. He gave me a copy of the book. We had a chuckle about it, we got chatting, and literally that conversation, that guy, this book, that night, changed my life. And for the other 8 people in the restaurant that night who were sitting on their own, they didn't have that life-changing experience. And that's what Table4One is all about. It's about taking those feelings of loneliness and isolation and converting them into life-changing opportunities. So how do we do it? We have solo business travelers. We intelligently connect them and we make it easy for them to meet up in our partner venues. How does it work? I'd ask you to use your imagination a little bit with this one. So I was in Web Summit at, last year in Lisbon. Now hotels are going digital as we know, so I was on the hotel app. I was looking at the room service menu on the whole hotel app, and Table4One popped up. I don't know what happened there. Table4One popped up on the hotel app, and gave me the opportunity to meet interesting people around. And I saw a really interesting guy. He was a Japanese event management company CEO. So we connected on Table4One. We arranged that we'd meet up in the hotel restaurant. We went down to the hotel restaurant, had a fantastic meal, lovely bottle of wine, really good conversation. And he's actually now, as a consequence, he's considering investing in Table4One. So, you know, that's the kind of experience that can happen. From a corporate point of view, we can offer something different. So we can offer something that feeds into the employee well-being space. As we know, business travel can be lonely, it can be isolating. And over the past couple of years, we've had our fill of loneliness and isolation. So, you know, this can help from a mental health point of view. We can also increase the pipeline and the opportunities that our business travelers have by presenting more interesting people to them. And we can get more value from business trips essentially by connecting our business travelers with other interesting people. For TMCs, we can offer something interesting that they can offer their corporate, something innovative, something new. Again, it facilitates traveler well-being and wellness, and potentially a new revenue stream for TMCs as well. From a revenue point of view, we get our revenue from the hospitality industry, where we connect people and then we can steer them to the right place to meet. That could be a table at a nice restaurant. It could be a game of golf. So anything where there's a similarity between the two business travelers and an opportunity for them to connect and meet. We launched pre-COVID, not the ideal timing, and we got 50,000 downloads in more than 100 countries. We're relaunching again this week. We have already partnered with some really innovative brands, and we're looking out for more partnership opportunities for companies who want to offer something else to their business travelers. And we're trialing with hotels in the US, India, and the UK. We have a fantastic team. We're all seasoned business travelers. We've decades of experience running businesses across multiple sectors. I'm joined here by my co-founder, David Taylor, who's just there. David is a travel industry veteran. He spent 30 years in the travel and travel tech space. He was a co-founder of BA.com. He was employee number 1 in Apodo. So he's been at the forefront of innovation in the travel space for, as I say, almost 3 decades. And my own background is leading multinationals, leading operations for multinationals across multiple sectors, the tech sector, financial services, and health and wellness. We're raising seed investment at the moment. We're raising 350K GBP, and we've got really good traction on that at the moment. I mentioned early on in the conversation about the life-changing experience that I had. Now, imagine that you've got the potential to create those life-changing experiences for thousands or millions of people. Imagine who you could connect with today that could change your life, or you could change theirs. Since time immemorial, humans have been coming together and breaking bread and conversing. That's how deals have been done, that's how friendships have been made, that's how opportunities have been created. If you'd like to know more about Table4One, pull up a seat at our table. Let's talk. Let's break bread. Let's do business. Thank you.
Well done. And now we've got 4 minutes for the judges. Take it away,
kick it off.
Steve.
So yeah, you'd be clear that you're currently driving through hotel partnerships. And just real quick, is it just the surfacing of the Table4One app and the UX into the hotel, or is there a deeper integration into like the guest information systems?
Both. So we can do it at a variety of different levels. So we can go from a no tech to a high tech model. Our intent is to get more and more integrated into the hotel PMSs, into the hotel apps, into the hotel.
And that's your primary strategy going forward. You mentioned something about corporate. What is your sort of your strategy or tactic with corporate engagement? How do you?
So similarly, we want to be wherever the business traveler is. So if there's a TMC portal that's used, we'd like to be a button on there that's offering new functionality to the corporates. If they use their own portal or their own website for corporate travel, we'd like to be there as well, just as an additional option, so they can derive more value from the trip. We're keen to connect and to partner with everybody in the industry who has an audience of business travelers.
And you're looking at. So you have your own user network, right? Are you connected to other third-party networks for enabling the discovery?
That's part of the plan, that we will connect with other networks. So as I say, we're relaunching at the moment. Pre-COVID, we were going down a very much a B2C route. Post-COVID, we're keen to go down the B2B route where we have those partnership opportunities.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have already some corporates who have implemented the?
Not yet.
data?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
No, we're early stage. So
You don't have any data yet on. I'm curious to see what would be the uptake. As a travel manager, would I see really an impact on my travelers? But you don't have that data yet, no?
Well, we have data from our pre-COVID launch, so we know the demographic, we know the kind of people that do connect, that do use it. What we've seen so far is that it tends to be more senior people who really recognize the value of networking. The demographic split is, it works across all age groups, so there's no particular tendency for any particular age group. It's been about 70% male, 30% female. So we have quite a bit of data in terms of the demographic of usage so far, but in terms of the corporate impact, not as yet.
Okay.
I guess just from me then, how does a user connect to another user? So what is that experience? I go in and how do I search for other people? Is there criteria to make those connections, or are you taking some data to make recommendations on who you should connect with?
Yeah, so as it works at the moment, you download the app, we suck some information in from LinkedIn, and then you complete a profile indicating your professional preferences and your personal interests. And then you tell us where you're going to go. So I'm going to be in Manchester next Thursday, and with our proprietary algorithm, we'll look at the other people that are going to be in Manchester, and we'll do a comparison and offer you an ordered, a prioritized list of people that you can connect with based on who we think would be the best business opportunity for you. So we'll give you information about their industry and their title and their interests and their likes, and then it's a matching process. So you say you're interested in meeting somebody, and they say they're interested in meeting you, and then there's a chat mechanism within the app to allow people to connect and figure out where they're going to go.
And then do you allow people to rate their experience? Oh,
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Oh boy. Okay.
It's like corporate Tinder.
I was just going
Yeah,
to
it
say
is.
that.
Well,
yeah.
Tinder works for a third of people who are single or pretending to be single, and we're catering for the other 2/3 of the market. But it's I'm happily married, so I'm not going to go on Tinder, but I'm still keen not to sit on my own and order room service. So I want to connect with somebody interesting.
And that's the end of our judges' questions. And now for the audience. And full disclosure, one of the contestants in our Innovation Face-Off.
I think that was really well presented. My question is around how do you vet individuals in this? Because it's the internet and the communication channels that people have now, there's always security risks, and this isn't an individual on Tinder trying to find a date. This is somebody on travel on behalf of a company quite often.
Yep.
How do you ensure the security of that individual who is essentially making a choice to meet someone random at a table?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I guess
Yeah.
that's come up in conversation as you've been building this.
Yeah. Great question. So first of all, people register using LinkedIn, so that gives us one layer of safety and security. It's something that's come up a lot from female business travelers in particular, and female business travelers have the option to connect with other female business travelers, as do male to male. So that offers another layer of safety and security. It is something that we're absolutely very conscious of and taking very seriously, and we have other functionality that we're building into our next version and the version beyond, having spoken and engaged with security consultants and safety consultants. So really good question. It's something that we do take absolutely very seriously. It's an interesting one because, you know, 10 years ago, if people had spoken about getting into a car with a stranger or staying in a stranger's house, you know, people would have taken a little gasp of air and been surprised at that. But Uber and Airbnb are you know, commonplace today. And from my own personal perspective, I think meeting somebody in a crowded restaurant, the risk level of that is significantly less than getting into a car with a stranger or staying in somebody's house. But it is absolutely a top priority for us.
Hi. So I have a question about the payment side, actually. Is there any kind of mechanism in place to control that? Because you mentioned sharing a bottle of wine with someone. I could see once the check comes, you have two people on two different expense accounts, kind of a way to kind of sort out kind of who's paying for what.
Yeah, there is a notification that the expectation is that the bills will be split accordingly. So that's made clear as part of the connecting process. Good question.
I just wondered what or who is your competition? Do you have any?
That's a really interesting one. You know, my feeling on it is our competition is actually loneliness and isolation. There are some other platforms out there. LinkedIn is obviously something that people use. They say, I'm going to Paris, anybody around would like to connect. There is a platform called Shaper, which is a networking platform, but it's not really targeting the business travel sector. So within the business travel niche, I don't see anybody else targeting that particular sector, and we're laser focused on that sector and on the hospitality sector. So I don't see any direct competition in what it is that we do in that space, other than loneliness, isolation, room service, ordering in.
All right then. How about a big hand for Karen? Nice
Thank you
job.
very much. Appreciate it.
And next up, we'll hear from Martin Bierman, Chief Product Officer, HRS. There you go. We've got 7 minutes on the clock.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, first of all, I would like to introduce you to HRS and our Green Stay initiative. HRS is a procure-to-pay platform that we offer to corporates to put their lodging programs on autopilot. With lodging programs, we mean anything that entails accommodation, meetings, or nowadays also co-working spaces. HRS platform is used today by 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies globally, and they optimize roughly 150 million transactions every year through our platform. And today I would like to introduce you to our new Green Stay initiative, which we have launched in the midst of last year, and now have basically some experiences that we want to share today. First of all, what's the purpose behind this initiative? Any one of us might be familiar with the so-called 1.5 degree target of the Paris Agreement, which means that we need to drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in order to stop the further heating of the Earth's surface. Otherwise, we will put 3 billion people at risk at the date of, or at the year of 2070, that will have to leave the current locations that they're living in because of further bushfires, of storms, thunderstorms, of floods, of anything that comes to when it comes to climate threats. And this is why is it important for our industry? Well, first of all, the travel industry is responsible for 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions that are basically a big driver in the further temperature increase on the globe's surface. And this is why we decided to basically build the Green Stay initiative. So first of all, when we look into the travel category and specifically business travel, first on mind is flights. And that was true for a long period of time. However, specifically now accelerated through the pandemic, we still look at the average business trip composition of now a decreased activity on the flights, specifically because there's hardly any international travel today, where basically the flight segment has decreased or still is has decreased to 60% of the original in 2019. So the picture has shifted towards the next largest emittent of greenhouse gas emissions specifically, which is the lodging category. And here we see that from the HRS side specifically that we see travelers now basically being more, they're planning their business trips much better and they're staying 50% longer in the hotel. So they try to pack more meetings or more kind of activities into a business trip when they go on travel. So this is why the average emissions or the average emission proportion has now largely shifted to the lodging category. So how can we optimize these fields? First of all, on the flight side, we're quite limited from a corporate travel management perspective because flights operate in a small number of aircraft models and variations. They're operating on fixed schedules and routes. So from a travel management perspective, there's not too much how we can drive down the emissions. Also nowadays, we're sometimes, especially in the post-pandemic world, we're basically facing that the aircraft that is basically presented on the booking system is not necessarily the aircraft that you're actually going to fly in. So the picture is different on the lodging side. Here we see a quite wide spectrum of emissions depending on the hotel's environmental footprint and their management capacities around this. So here when we would have the data about the exact carbon footprint, water footprint, waste footprint of each individual hotel that we would consider for our next trip or meeting or even working from the hotel, then we could make much smarter choices because of the large kind of availability of properties for our trips. So on average, we see per destinations that travelers are going to 320 hotels available at the time of search. So if we would have this information, we can enable travelers, agents, and other people make smarter choices. But how do we get there? So how do we get to this information from hotels on their emissions, on their footprints, and further indicators of how they manage environmental sustainability? The goal here is that we want to establish a framework that enables us to report, reduce, and remove anything that is related to environmental impact or inefficiencies in this regard. Second, we need to be able to identify sustainable suppliers and basically separate them from those that we deem not sustainable today, and then promote those in front specifically of our travelers and the agents booking on behalf of our travelers to basically materialize the smart choices we want to make. There are two big challenges that we need to overcome. The first of it being that on average globally 50% of the hotels that we're talking about are provided by independent suppliers. They're not part of a global hotel chain where we can centrally source this information from. On the second component, when we look to the standard means that we have established to exchange information with hotels today on the corporate side, then the traditional formats of RFPs or further contracting information is not sufficient because we reach with our corporate lodging program so far on average only 50% of the global spend. So there's another 50% on spend where we cannot optimize specifically greenhouse gas emissions because there's no direct information exchange with these hotels in the spot market. So how can we overcome this situation? And this is where from the HRS side we first started some research and then we took a slightly different approach. So when we did our research, we basically looked at all the different eco-labels that are out there and that are used today and presented by the hotel industry. And out of roughly 9,000 sustainability agencies that are active globally, a little bit more than 200 are oftentimes referred to. The challenge here is that each of these agencies have not just one label, but sometimes they have 3 labels: bronze, silver, gold, and nobody really knows what they represent. So there's labels for basically the overall building technology or building material, the efficiency of the HVAC systems in a hotel building. There's labels for how you operate your laundry, if you outsource it or insource it. There's labels for back-of-house operations like green purchasing activities and so on and so forth. So these labels are representing different types of activities around sustainable operations in hotels. The next big challenge is that these labels, to the most part, do not relate to international and global standards like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol or the Paris Agreement and Kyoto Agreement kind of standards of how you entail carbon footprints, for example, and how you report them. The next big challenge is that from these labels, as they, in the nature of basically looking at just a particular part of the pie, these labels and the data that we can get from them cannot be used for reporting in corporate standards. So this is where we have set up now a new framework for the assessment of all of the different footprints and indicators following global standards, and then on top of that present this into the corporate procurement tools, booking tools, very intuitively to make smarter choices going forward.
So we're out of time, so quickly wrap up.
Yeah, so we report on this based on corporate standards for Carbon Disclosure Project, Global Reporting Initiative, and Science-Based Targets Initiative, so that we have compliant reporting here on the data side. And in order to complete the report, reduce, remove framework, we also allow high-quality certified offsetting in our system for unavoidable emissions. Last but not least, we have now hotels joined the program in 130 countries from 310 hotel chains globally, and we are now quite successful and look forward for the next iteration on Green Stay. Thank you.
Thank you. So Jack, I believe it's up to you to start the questioning this time.
Great presentation. What is there a revenue model for you for this? What's the incentive for you to do this, other than saving the world?
Yeah.
And also, what's the incentive for hotels to join, especially smaller ones who may not have the money to initiate some of these things?
Yeah. No, this is a big topic. Any of these labels I mentioned are costing between 900 and 2,500 euros for smaller hotels on an annual basis. So it's a subscription for just representing a small piece of sustainable practices in hotels. And basically the revenue model behind this is more of a strategic nature, that we understand that hotels that will not have the ability to present and report their environmental footprint going forward will have to be taken out of corporate lodging programs, which also then impacts our business as HRS. And the industry has to invest $800 billion until the year of 2050 in order to reduce 90% of their emissions. So if we cannot support them through the correct means that our corporate community needs, which is foundation or credible data for reporting and basically in an audit-proof manner retaining these properties in their corporate lodging programs, then we will run into a serious situation in this industry. And this is why we made this entire system free of charge for the hotels. We have packed it now with educational programs, webinars, and also partner network for hotels to freely access to partners and educational programs of how they can basically reduce their environmental impact specifically to the data they provide us. So when they have a water issue, we present them the webinars for how to reduce your water footprint, for example. So this is our approach, free of charge, and also now opening up to partners that can basically leverage the data in their systems, and also these hotels can basically provide and use the system.
So it's an open platform that any hotel can come to you and say, hey, I'm
Yes.
going to do this, check, check, check.
Yes,
And
they
you
just
go,
need to
now
register,
you're
get a
listed.
number from us and a login, and then they can use that. Yes.
May I ask one more question? So I saw this last year, and I'm having a hard time seeing what's different.
The difference is three elements. The first element is we have introduced on our corporate customers' demand a backfilling algorithm that uses neural network classifiers depending on or to identify hotels that have provided us the data with similarities like the category, the size, the age, and so on, to basically estimate the footprint for a hotel that has not yet provided us the data in this framework, so that we can really cover all the hotels globally and also under certified means. The second element is that we found some hotels are not yet able to provide us their data because they simply do not have access in some regions of this globe to the kilowatt hours of the energy consumption. They don't have meters in some regions of the world. So we now have a three-level approach where they can basically join on the basic level assessment, then move up to the advanced level assessment with footprint analysis, and then go to the expert level assessment where they have to provide external certifications on the data that they provide us.
Which costs money.
which then costs money, but this is basically to certify the data you provide us is the actual data and is the correct one.
Certified by HRS or certified?
No, certified
Thank you.
by financial auditors. So we
Okay.
have 24 accredited companies, SGS, Bureau Veritas, TÜV, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And then the third component is we allow our corporates now to put points weighting behind the criteria we are assessing and the footprint bandwidth. So we have customers in Northern America who put a high focus on the water impact, whereas other customers in Europe put everything onto the carbon impact perspective, and others basically prioritize for pollution, for circular economy, and other areas.
Great.
And that's the end of our judges' questioning time.
No, we answered my questions.
A point of information, Steve saw this last year at Innovate in the fall. So these additional things happened since the fall of last year. Okay, questions from the audience?
I might have missed this because the wrap-up was pretty quick. Is the emission data that you provide to your customers at hotel chain level, property level, or occupied bedroom level?
This is, unfortunately, due to the timing of the session, the most important question, because it is exactly that difference that we are trying to make. We need to report on a product carbon footprint. So you as a corporate buyer, you need to basically report on what has the hotel room consumption that I paid for exactly emitted, rather than saying what is the overall hotel's emissions, including casinos, restaurants, wellness areas, that you have not consumed. So what we basically provide is so-called product carbon footprint for the desk on the co-working area, for the meeting room by square meter hour, and by the room night that you stay in the particular room. Yeah.
I may have missed this too, but if we're bringing HRS into a booking tool, is there any way for you to display that information into the booking tool?
Yes, absolutely.
At the point of sale.
So you get all our 5S scores, security rating of the neighborhood, safety and hygiene protocol compliance of the hotel, the ratings and reviews from your travelers, as well as now sustainability, the carbon footprint, the benchmark classification is all on each hotel in the list.
Is this also expanded to meeting space?
Yes, exactly. So we cover meeting rooms with metrics per the square meter hour. We cover overnight accommodation per occupied room, and we cover also co-working spaces, the work desk by the hour that you rent them.
In terms of the resources where the information is pulled from, is that supplier's choice, or do you have a list of vetted, preferred, secured partners they have to choose from?
Yeah. So there's two pathways to this. The first one is the hotel industry, represented by 27 of the largest hotel groups globally, have come up with a methodology for measuring their carbon footprint, the HCMI methodology, Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative. And we implemented this digitally into the platform, so hotels that have not done so can provide their kilowatt hours of energy, mobile fuels, refrigerants, all of this consumption data, and the system calculates based on that standard the carbon emission, for example. And hotels who have already done so externally, they confirm back to us, I think it's 12 criteria, and then they can sideload or match the existing footprints, so they don't have to go through this again, basically.
And that's done on property level, not on chain level?
Exactly, it has to be on property level, yes.
Thank you. In terms of the HRS's information back to the customer, you're just providing that information. There's no attempt to benchmark a hotel within that structure. So you're saying the greenhouse gas emissions for that hotel are X, and it's then up to the customer to make a decision. There's no benchmarking to say that hotel has less emissions than that hotel, because there isn't, in my understanding, apart from the HCMI, which you quote, any kind of benchmarking tool that anyone can stand behind at this point, although I appreciate there may be in the future.
Yeah. So HCMI is just a methodology of how we come to the footprint metric, let's say 45 kilogram per room night. And then we do apply a benchmark in the system. You saw the A, B, C, D kind of rating in there, which is a quartile distribution analysis per market, so per destination. So we basically look at all the metrics received from all the hotels in a particular market, like London, and then we basically apply it into 25 percentiles and say, okay, this one with this KPI is rather an A. It's basically leading on this entire distribution set, whereas another one might be a D, so it's lagging behind the average. And so this is where you can basically then also compare and make sure I want to have 80% of my hotels in Norway on the A grade, and I want 80% of my hotels in in the UK also on an A grade. So you can basically, it's normalizing it on a global level.
Excellent. How about a big hand from Martin?
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Some pens in there. Sorry.
And drop the mic. Okay. It's okay. Leave it there. And now for our final competitor for this Business Travel Innovation Face-Off for Business Travel Show Europe, Andrew Hughes, Managing Director of TripShift. You've got all the tools of the trade. You've got your time on the clock. Take it away.
No slides. I'm going to lose them. Good morning. Thank you very much. Great to be here this morning. I'm looking forward to telling you more about TripShift. Quick introduction. Andrew Hughes, Managing Director and one of the founders of TripShift.
Excuse me, Andrew. I'm not sure that's on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Always good to check the mic, isn't it? So yeah, CEO of TripShift, a born-again environmentalist, which given that most of my career has actually been spent in private jet aviation, is quite a conversion. I like to consider myself now as an aviation professional with a keen sense of irony, let's say. TripShift is, juggling this, TripShift is an automated carbon tracking platform. It's designed specifically to help businesses manage the problem of tracking Scope 3 emissions related to our business travel, commutes, or transport, where increasingly TCFD legislation now requires businesses to both report and reduce these emissions. The key emphasis there is reduce. Our mission is simple: transforming net zero strategy into action, enabling businesses, communities, and people to visualize, manage, and reduce their transport-related carbon emissions. So carbon. I think by now most of us have got the memo, the one that says carbon is a really bad thing, too much carbon is a really bad thing, and we need to do something about it pretty quickly. In its strictest interpretation, there's a section of the world that say we now need to stop travelling. Business travel, flights abroad for leisure, whatever, is all bad. We must stop. We must save the environment. A more enlightened approach perhaps recognises the need to manage our carbon emissions, but also understands that travel or transport is a huge social and economic enabler, a force for good, whether it is to enjoy your holiday or clinch that deal face-to-face with a handshake. We're all here today. However, we must not lose sight of the fact that currently travel and transport emissions represent around 25% of total annual carbon emissions, so there's a significant chunk we have to reduce. Travel is clearly important, but we simply all have to move better. TripShift is a tool that helps you move better. It's designed to win on 3 mutually supportive levels. For business, your net zero action. We've all got a chairman of the board. We've all got a chairman of the board who's made a net zero proclamation by 2030 in a back room somewhere. There's 6 or 7 people, head in hands, going, "How the hell are we going to actually work this out? How are we going to do this?" TripShift is there to help start that journey with real action. We help businesses build their ESG risk management statements and compliance. We also help build positive brand perception, which is all important. The consumer impact of greenwashing and expectations around corporations or corporates to reduce carbon is going to be significant as we move forward. And for people, given how important this is, we make it really, really difficult for people to understand. Scientists talk in terms of millions of tons of carbon. The average person, your eyes roll to the back of your head. Millions. I don't even know what a kilo of carbon looks like. Never mind how much carbon I've created today when I've travelled to here from home this morning, which incidentally I can tell you because I've got it on my phone, and I'm happily talk about that afterwards. So TripShift creates a. This is jumping around all over the place, sorry. TripShift makes an easy, relatable interface with an environment that reacts to how you are travelling, showing you as the traveller exactly how much carbon you're creating as you move, but also how you can move better. In other words, how can we signpost you into reducing that carbon as you're moving? And for the environment, of course, we have potential to remove millions of tonnes of carbon globally just by getting people and businesses to move better. Again, I am aware of the irony there. I've just been moaning about talking about millions of tonnes of carbon, and I've gone straight to the millions of tonnes of carbon, but forgive me. So let's talk about our innovation. GPS, that's not innovative, but we do utilise GPS tracking. What we have done is we've got proprietary algorithms that we've built in to look at the specific characteristics of your GPS movement so that we can understand how you're moving. In other words, are you on a train, are you on a plane or an automobile, for those that remember the film? But we can cover ferries, cars, EVs, bikes, scooters, you name it, we can cover. We've got about 75 different profiles in the system at the moment and can build out more. Once we can do that, once we know how you're moving, then of course we can give you an accurate carbon figure for that journey. And based on the journey type, the exact distance, no estimations, and of course this is all accurate data. The reality is we track you door to door. There are various platforms around at the moment, and if you buy an air ticket now, you might get an estimation of the carbon, something a point my colleague touched on earlier, or a train ticket, you might get an estimation of the carbon. They're fine in isolation, but actually your employer now has to account for the whole journey, door to door. We cover that all in one place, all in one platform, without the user having to jump around between platforms. So what's the benefit for business? Your commutes and business-related travel are fed back to the employer dashboard, which visualises the data, allowing them to identify opportunities to reduce emissions while also meeting their legislative requirements. Your employees become motivated and engaged, as gamification and nudge theory encourages them to make small changes in how they move, soft reductions, which all add up to a bigger difference without the need for heavy-handed travel management policies. The platform itself is cloud-based. We have software as a service model, automated data collection, transparent data analysis. It manages your impact profile and liabilities for any carbon-related taxation, which is inevitable. The platform is designed to be integratable and is also fully GDPR compliant and separates employees' private and work data. Do all businesses need to be using TripShift? No. You know, if you've got half a dozen employees, you might want to send out regular questionnaires or link it to the payment of travel expenses or some other form of asking people. You can collate the data on a spreadsheet. Absolutely fine. Think of 100 employees, 1,000 employees, or a global corporate with thousands of employees. Soon you've got an entire team just devoted to collecting the data. And that's before they've understood it or worked out what to do with it.
And that's your time, Andrew, so if you can just quickly wrap up.
I'm going to jump straight to the end then. Competition, we're not currently aware of anybody else that's doing this in terms of door-to-door tracking. We are on the market now, we're early into the market. We've 3 or 4 customers on board in the last month, which is since we've been on the market. Happy to talk about TripShift moving forward and how we can integrate with any of the platforms in the room that might be interested in having a conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now it's time for the judges. I believe
Can I
it's
start?
to you,
Yes.
Corinne.
Sure. How does it look like for the travelers? So you say you're tracking door to door, but does that mean as a traveler I have to go into the platform and say, okay, I'm going to take Uber, it's an electric car? So how does that work? I'm sorry.
No, the traveller has to install an app on their phone, but then it sits in the background once you've set it up. The traveller, we like the travellers to be looking at it because it does provide those move better hints into how they can move better. But actually they don't need to. The data sits there and is passively transmitted back to the back end where the analysis happens and then comes back to the phone.
So if I have the Uber app, it will take the data from
you can run the Uber app. No, we're not connected to the Uber app. So we're agnostic. We sit over the top of all of those. You can move exactly how you want to move, whether it's Uber, by train, by walking, whatever. We'll pick those all up. And I don't mind your platform you're working with. We've got a passive detection level above that, which produces your footprint.
So how does it know if it's an electric vehicle versus a non-electric? I'm a bit confused on that.
In first case, it doesn't, and you do have the ability to change mode within there. If it's your personal vehicle, so if it's a personal vehicle or a default vehicle, you can establish that within your profile. And for example, in the UK, we're linked to DVLA. So if you give me, when you're setting up your account, if you give me your car details or your registration plate, if you're driving a BMW 3 Series, you'll get the emissions for a BMW 3 Series as your standard position. You then have the ability, if I've hired a car, to profile that at the start of the journey, and then it will give you those emissions for that particular vehicle.
I think just as a follow-up, I'd be quite interested to know a bit more about the gamification piece, because I think there's a lot of work going on about sustainability and being aware, but I think it's about making people make the right choices and change and being
Sure.
rewarded, and the gamification piece would be good to elaborate on.
So we've nudge theory, change management theory has been built into it. So we present a visual interface that tells you how you're doing today, and that changes based that you literally control the environment. So if I've been walking today, the sun is out on the app, the trees are in full bloom, and the birds are singing if you turn the soundtrack up. If I've been in the car for 4 hours today, the sky is hidden behind the clouds, the trees are dead, and some of the birds are moving. The trees are dying. Sorry, not dead. That's a bit extreme. It changes based on your individual behaviour per day. So you're not if you drive to work every day, you're not permanently locked into a world of doom and gloom. It recognises small changes. So if you're in the car for 5 minutes less today, it still recognises that and references and shows an improvement in your environment. In terms of the bigger gamification, we've built league tables into it, and we've built, you can add your social network friends into to create your local leagues. We've got national leagues as well in terms of carbon. And we've built a currency into it, TripShift points, which reward good behaviour, which we're now monetising with the transport operators, with scooter hires, for example. Those TripShift points convert over to percentage discounts on a new electric bike or whatever that looks like for you as an individual. And the other thing, we can also, in a corporate sense, we can build that into teams, which has been useful so far. So again, trying to establish corporate engagement and get the employees voluntarily engaged with this. For example, we have, you can go accounts versus sales, or the London office versus the Paris office. Who's going to achieve the most carbon reduction this month? Again, generates we all like competition. We all like to show off every now and again when we're winning. So it builds that sort of ongoing engagement with the users. And of course that engagement results in you lowering your carbon, which is good for the business.
Is it the employee's data to give to the employer, or if the employer engage with you, who owns the data? And am I happy as an employee?
We anonymise the data, so when it hits our back end to be analysed, I don't know it's your data, and we anonymise it on that basis. We know it's a corporate account because you've registered with your corporate email, so your work data within that time goes straight back to the dashboard.
But if you're creating a league table of how you're comparing with other people,
when it comes back to you, because that's your data,
yeah,
it's repersonalised going back the other way, but we don't store it. I don't store it with your name on it, and nor does the company either. They get the data because they need the data. They don't need to identify you individually from a GDPR point of view.
And that's the time for our judges' questions, and now time for you. Anyone have a question?
So we have, at my firm, we have a carbon dashboard for our travellers to access so they can see their personal emissions. It's quite restricted, doesn't include quite a lot of modes of transport. So do you work with TMCs to, I don't quite understand. We get the data feed from our TMC and also some separate suppliers as well. But how would that work?
We're just starting to, and yes, we're in some discussions. The problem from a TMC's point of view is how you monetize it. My revenue is generated through the employers, through the corporates, who basically who pay us on a per user basis. There are a variety of so that's we can pass through, we can integrate, we can definitely plumb into your TMC systems, whatever they look like. We're running on standard Azure SQL technology. There's nothing exotic, so we can integrate and channel in. The issue we've had, particularly with one TMC, which we're fairly well engaged with, is how do they What do they give it away to their customer? Do they give it away as a value add, or do they try and add, a slice of revenue onto it? So that it's possible, and it's being discussed and explored at the moment.
I guess I'm a little confused about, is it, what I thought you said is that the data is all handled after the fact. So when someone goes to make a booking, are they getting any information that will help them make a decision as to what mode of transportation they should be taking?
If we were plumbing into a TMC, then yes, they would get whatever the TMC provides, but the data is after the fact because it's the accurate data of that actual journey. I said almost real. I think I said almost real-time tracking. We obviously have to determine when a journey finishes for us to be able to work out what the carbon emissions were for that journey. So we take the processing doesn't happen on your phone because it would kill batteries and all that sort of stuff. We take the data away to the back end at the point your journey is finished, and again we've got criteria that decides that algorithmically. It takes us about 5 or 10 minutes to process that data for that journey, and then it's returned to your phone as a completed journey and mapped out with all the benchmarks updated. So we lag about 10 to 15 minutes behind the actual journey. So, we don't say real time, but we're close to in relative terms.
So you're not actually pushing behavior at the time. You're instead giving people a report after the fact so that they can learn for the next time.
Within the mapping screen for an individual, they get pointers based on how they're moving. So, for example, I came through Croydon on the train this morning, and as soon as I hit Croydon, if I change train, which I did, it starts to push Croydon trams to me and things like that because they're more sustainable options than jumping in taxis and that sort of thing. So we signpost, and the same thing. If you drive to work every day, and your route to work takes you past 3 different train stations, which all lead to your roughly roughly towards your destination, we're going to start signposting. You really should get out of the car and jump on a train. It's much better. It's better for you, better for the employee, better for the world. So we do that practically within the app to the individual, not to the employer. The employer gets to see higher level data. For example, we've got a company who's got a factory just outside Birmingham. They've got about 500 employees. Almost all of their employees live within a 3 or 4 square mile urban area, which is about 5 or 6 miles from the factory. Almost all of those employees turn up individually every day at work in a car. The employer looks at that and says, that data now belongs to me. I'm now accountable for that carbon, that journey, and I've got all these people travelling alone in a car. Suddenly the employer, he's a manufacturer, he's not a bus operator, but suddenly looks at the data and goes, do you know what, it makes sense for me to buy an electric bus and run a shuttle from here to the factory to this area 3 times a day, because that's better for the environment and better for my carbon account and better for my tax when it gets linked to tax than having all these people travel individually in cars. So that's the incentive at an employer level.
How would your app know that they're all on the electric bus now?
Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
How would your app know now that everyone's on the electric bus? And then be able to report that delta for recognition to the corporate?
Well, we'd see that over time because the employer will be tracking all of those individuals, and obviously the employer needs to work with his employees as well to get them engaged in this. We see employers taking different approaches. Some of them are wrapping it into well-being type programs. Almost cycle to work type stuff. It's better to cycle to work. So employees need to work. They need to own this problem because it's their tax at the end of the day. It's their carbon, their tax. They need a strategy to talk to their employees and get their employees involved. We facilitate that happening and give the tools to do that, but the employer still needs to have an ongoing dialogue with employees.
So let me just ask something. So you're saying that you do mapping on trip and post trip. So you don't have any tools that says I want this pre-trip. So I'm going from Manchester to Excel today. So how do I get there easiest?
Not currently, because there are other tools. There are tools that would allow you to do that. But we could build it in, but our focus so far has been just to focus on what do we really need to do. We need to make this data collection easy for an employer. We need to make it easy for individuals, and the route to doing that is automation as they're actually doing it. If you look at the carbon calculators that are out there at the moment, I call them, and this is in no means disrespectful, but I call them calorie counters. and we've all done the calorie counters, right, on New Year's, as your New Year's resolution. On day one, you feed all the data in, everything you've done all day, everything's gone in, and you've got an accurate answer. Day two, you've missed a meal, but okay, I'll make it up tomorrow. Day three, you're really not liking what it's telling you now. Day four, you've binned it. So that we decided was not going to be good for long-term engagement. So we had to automate. We had to make it passive in the background. We had to bring in the automation and the gamification to get people engaged, to make people get more involved and want to make changes. And then we've linked it all back into the employer, who ultimately gets the benefit from that as well.
How about a big hand for Andrew? Thank you, sir. And that is the last word on the matter before the judges have time to deliberate and are ready to rule. So please join us back here promptly at 14:30 to hear their ruling on who wins the 2022 Business Travel Show Europe Business Travel Innovator Award. So thanks so much. We'll see you later on. Thank you.